So the grid forming up now to make their way round the last couple of corners to start the race. So of course the field now bunching up as close as they possibly can, hoping to get the jump through to start onto the start finish straight, and of course there is no overtaking until the line. And now we are away for the start of the feature race this evening. Of course, all cars making their way down to turn 1. Just remember, ladies and gentlemen, that you can't win the race in the first lap, but you can most certainly lose it. So with Banslowski leading from Shorzy, moving through GRG Jacob, Sausage Miyagi losing a couple of places on the first couple of corners. Hopefully he can make his way back through the field as we get going. Oh, we have a spinner, so that is Shorzy spinning and right down to the back of the field. So following GRG Jacob onto the back straight, making his way through, and Banslowski has pulled out a second and a half, 1.6 seconds to the start from the second place car. Really getting his head down and trying to pull as much of a gap on this first lap as he possibly can. Moving back through the field, that bag Z4 running wide with Doherty James and Calm Big Tam close on his heels. Oh, and Big Tam running slightly wide. Oh, getting very sideways through the long right-hander. Moving back to the front of the field, GRG Jacob under massive pressure from Sausage Miyagi, with Redshift 80 following on behind. Sausage Miyagi sucking up right behind him in the toe. Maybe he might go for a move into this very tight first left-hander. Not quite close enough this time, and just in the background there, Calm Big Tam making a move down the inside on that bag Z4, with Doherty James leading that little gaggle of cars there, with Big Tam running in 6th place, that bag Z4 and CRS Dizzy running in 8th position. So following back through to the start and following this little gaggle of cars in that battle for 2nd, 3rd and 4th as they make their way down the back straight. Redshift having a little look, not quite close enough this time. So Doherty James just pulling a little bit of a gap, about just over a second ahead of Calm Big Tam. Maybe he can make that gap up. So Sausage Miyagi and GRG Jacob running very close together for 2nd and 3rd. Sausage Miyagi looks like he might be having a little think about a move, maybe trying to do the switchback on Jacob. There he goes up the inside. Maybe he's going to have a run into that final corner. Not quite close enough, not quite far enough alongside. That's some good racing there. Not attempting any silly moves, just conserving the car, conserving pace, and living to fight another day. That is Redshift 80 having a little look down the inside of Sausage Miyagi, who seems to have lost a little bit of pace out and up the inside into 3rd place, Redshift 80. So running to the back of the field and having a quick look, we have a little battle going on for 5th and 6th between Calm Big Tam and Doherty James, with both of them trying their hardest. A little bit of sideways action there from Doherty James, just really throwing the car into that corner. Big Tam just having getting a little bit of a gap this time and slowing down. Does Big Tam have a problem? Is there an issue with Big Tam? He seems to be slowing down and losing vast amounts of time. So moving back to the front of the field, we have GRG Jacob leading Redshift 80 with Sausage Miyagi trying a potential move, having a look, not quite on this time, but hopefully he can get the draft through this right-hander and get back onto the rear bumper of that red 80. Moving to the front of the field now, Banslowski running away. He's got a 3-second gap at this point, really getting his head down and trying to create as much of a gap as possible. Of course, everybody has to do a mandatory pit stop at this point, so he will of course lose a little bit of time then. So back to Sausage Miyagi, who has dropped off the back of that pack a little bit, and maybe there was a little bit of a mistake earlier in the lap. Redshift 80 and GRG Jacob running through that front section of the course. Redshift 80 of course getting his head down and trying to get right on the back bumper of that BMW to potentially get a run onto this next straight, just trying to sit in the draft as much as possible and try and get the toe down the straights. So moving back to 6th and 7th position there. Big Tam seems to have sorted his problem out, seems to be back roughly onto race pace now. Of course, Shorzy closing up very quickly onto the back of his car. So moving of course back to the front of the field, GRG Jacob and Redshift 80 battling it out for 2nd and 3rd place. And going into this final corner, are we going to see a move into turn 1 as that Redshift 80 is right on the back of GRG Jacob, is following along as closely as he possibly can. He may have a little look this time, just showing the front of the car to GRG Jacob there, just reminding him that he is there and he needs to be aware and make sure that he's driving defensively. So running you through the field, we have Banslowski leading with GRG Jacob in 2nd, Redshift 80 in 3rd, Sausage Miyagi in 4th, Doherty James in 5th, CRC Dizzy in 6th. We have Calm Big Tam in 7th with Shorzy in 8th, and That Bag Z4 bringing up the rear of the field. So moving back to, and we may be seeing a I can't quite see the other car. Yes, we did just see a move for 3rd place, but given straight back, and that was a very deliberate give back then. That wasn't a move for position. So we obviously missed something on the cameras there going into that first corner. So again, Miyagi and Redshift 80 fighting for 3rd and 4th place. GRG Jacob seems to have pulled a little bit of a gap. Obviously Redshift 80 and Sausage Miyagi fighting behind him, just giving him the chance to run away a little bit and just pull a little bit of a gap. So moving back to the rear of the field, we have Calm Big Tam just coming up very close to the back of CRS Dizzy, not quite close enough this time to make a move, taking a very wide line into that first corner, but it does seem to work for him. He is of course all over the back of CRS Dizzy. Just reminding him again that he is there and CRS Dizzy needs to be aware that a move may come at any time. So screaming through the S's, all 3 of those cars then, so Doherty James, CRS Dizzy and Calm Big Tam all running through there very quickly. So just running back through to the front of the field, Banslowski now a 4.5 second gap to the car behind. Is currently the fastest lap holder as well. Sorry, Khan Big Tam is the fastest lap holder with a 1:38.7, and we've just seen a move for position there. Khan Big Tam and CRS Dizzy. An incident there that we seem to have missed. Maybe we'll hear about it a little bit later on. So moving back, Redshift 80 and Sausage Miyagi battling it out. They've been battling for the entire race so far for that third and fourth position, for the final podium position. So we are now on to lap 8 of 27. Sorry, we're on lap 7 of 27. Of course, we have lap 1 being the formation lap to rearrange the grid for this feature race. So the gap to the leader now 5 seconds. Banslowski seems to be running away with this race. Nobody else seems to be able to get near him. Of course, getting the jump right from the start and just robbing off into the distance. So moving to the back of the field, Khan Big Tam moving back onto the rear bumper of CRS Dizzy. Another good battle throughout this race, with a couple of overtakes each, with Khan Big Tam getting really close to the back. Oh, and a little look up the inside there. Again, not quite close enough, but he does seem to be getting closer and closer every corner. And there we go. We are looks to the outside. CRS Dizzy trying to hold the inside line, trying to hold the defensive line, with Big Tam just looking to the outside of his car, trying to get the run on him into that last corner. Goes to the outside to try and get a run down this straight before the final turn, and into a little love tap there into the final corner. This is of course touring car racing, so that does occasionally happen. So moving back to the front of the field. Oh, and Sausage Miyagi up into third place. So obviously being able to get round Redshift 80 at some point during the last lap and straight onto the back bumper of GRG Jacob. Now, of course, Sausage Miyagi was our second place qualifier, so very clearly has the pace in the car to challenge for the lead. Let's see if he can find a way around GRG Jacob, who of course is driving a defensive line to try and keep Sausage Miyagi behind. Oh, and Sausage Miyagi looking to the inside. It's going to be on the outside for this long right-hander. Not quite close enough this time. Just looking to the outside, trying to get as much drive off the corner as possible. And on the run down to the final straight, may have fallen back into the clutches of Redshift 80 slightly. Don't think that any of them are quite close enough this time round to attempt a move. So moving back to CRS Dizzy, who Khan Big Tam has managed to find a way past. Making his way down to the first hairpin. So back to the front of the field for this battle for second, third and fourth place. This seems to be the hot battle right now in this race. So all three cars running within a second of each other, all running very close together. It takes a tremendous amount of skill to drive this close together and to be competitive and fast. So Sausage Miyagi having a little look to the outside there, not quite close enough, just showing the nose of the car to GRG Jacob, just in that wing mirror. And maybe looking to the inside there, but not quite close enough. Through the penultimate corner, and of course turning left again into the final corner, trying to get a run onto that start-finish straight, and he is right behind GRG Jacob there. And it does appear that the BMW just has the legs on that Renault down the straights, just being able to slightly pull away, a little bit of a better drive out of the final corner there. So moving once again to the back of the field, CRS, Dizzy and Calm Big Tam and Shorzy all fighting for position for 6th, 7th and 8th at this point. And of course Calm Big Tam straight down the inside, with CRS Dizzy fighting him on the outside. Oh, and it's almost side by side through these S's, with Calm Big Tam right all over the back bumper of, oh, and very sideways for Calm Big Tam there. If we can get the camera round to see what happened there, very, very sideways. Some incredible car control from Calm Big Tam, able to catch massive slides in that Renault, but has now managed to get it all back under control and back onto the rear bumper of CRS Dizzy. Shorzy seems to be just hanging on to the back of that group at the moment, just keeping an eye on things, just maybe waiting to see, just in case something happens up in front, just sitting there, just a little bit off the back of this group now. So back to second place, and Sausage Miyagi up into second place, with GRG Jacob looking to the inside. Oh, and Sausage Miyagi gives him room. Some really nice clean racing there, with Sausage Miyagi and GRG Jacob battling for position all the way through these S's, with GRG Jacob right on the rear bumper through these S's. And Sausage Miyagi just pulling a tiny bit of a gap now, so just up to just over a second for Sausage Miyagi. Let's see if he can now get his head down and try and close the gap to Banslowski, who is of course out in front with a 6-second lead. However, Sausage Miyagi does seem to be cutting into that gap. So now we move back to Redshift 80 and Doherty James fighting for 4th and 5th position. Can Doherty James try and get onto the back bumper of that Renault of Redshift 80s, the monster Renault of Redshift 80s, and try and challenge for 4th position? So again, moving to the back of the field, Calm Big Tam seems to have made a little bit of a break from that group, obviously managing to move past Shorzy and CRS Dizzy for 6th position, and now maybe he can get his head down. There's quite a considerable gap between 5th and 6th place, about 12 seconds, so it'll be interesting to see how the pit stops play out during this race, and as to whether he can make his way back up to 5th position. So of course we are now on lap 12, so the pit stop window is now open. The pit stop window is open, so people can start coming in for their mandatory tyre change pit stops. So moving back up to the front of the field, Banslowski seems to have steadied the gap a little bit now at about 6 seconds. So it will be interesting to see if Sausage Miyagi can get his head down and just try and close up the gap. Still a few laps remaining, still quite a few laps to go, and still plenty of racing to come. So back with Doherty James, still trying to get onto the back of Redshift 80. Doesn't seem to have made much progress at the moment, but of course both men pushing as hard as they can through the final turn and onto the pit straight. So through turn 1 for GRG, Jacob seems to have just dropped off the back of Sausage Miyagi now. So I think Sausage Miyagi was really trying to get past, and was obviously had the quicker car at this point in time, but at this point has also managed to pull away from Redshift 80 slightly, with a little bit over a 3-second gap between the or just about a 3-second gap between the two cars. So back with your leader now, who has lost a little bit of time to Sausage Miyagi on this last lap, has managed to just try and keep the gap at about 5.8, 5.7 seconds. So back with Sausage Miyagi, who now seems to have got his head down and is just slowly pulling the gap in. His last lap was a 137.9 to Banslowski's 138.5. So he has gained about 6/10 on that last lap. So again, following along with Redshift 80, who is just running a nice race here in 4th position, just keeping the gap to the car behind him nice and stable, and just trying to move up onto the back of GRG Jacob in 3rd place, just to fight for that final podium position. So following along with Calm Big Tam and Dizzy both fighting for position. Dizzy only 0.3 of a second behind at this point in time, getting through to the middle section of the race now. So of course we are going to start seeing some pit stops, and I believe we are seeing our first pit stop as Shorzy, who is the last person on the road at the moment, is just exiting the pits. And so an early pit stop there for Shorzy. Maybe this will work out in his favour and help him to get back onto the rear of the field. So moving back to the front of the grid now, maybe we'll start to see some pit stops from some people at this point. Banslowski now with a 5-second gap, so the gap is coming down. A 138.1 to a 138.4 for Sausage Miyagi, who is in 2nd place. So he's gained about 3 or 4 tenths on that last lap. So he's very slowly working his way back up to Banslowski. So Calm Big Tam and CRS Dizzy making their way through the final corner to start. Oh, and a big slide there for Calm Big Tam. Some serious car control, managed to catch the car into that final corner, and CRS Dizzy and Doherty James into the pits at this point for their mandatory pit stops. So let's follow Doherty James as he changes tyres and away he goes. So that pit stop has dropped him back to 8th place. We'll have to wait and see where that shakes him out. So of course Calm Big Tam now with some clear air. Hopefully he can start to make some progress and give us the in-lap of his life for these pit stops. So Banslawski now coming round the penultimate corner, the penultimate left-hander. The gap this time back up to 6.5, 6.4 seconds. So it has gone back up again. Of course, the gap fluctuates a little bit throughout the lap depending on where the cars are in terms of each other. So again, Sausage Miyagi now pulling away from GRG Jacob, has a 5-second gap on GRG Jacob in third place, and is trying as hard as he can to close the gap to first place. It'll be interesting to see how the pit strategy shakes itself out once everybody has done their pit stops. So we now watch the back of the field. So of course these guys have already done their mandatory pit stops. So Dodie James in 7th place, Shawsey in 8th, and CRS Dizzy in 9th. So of course these guys will all start to gain a little bit of time at this point, now that all the rest of the field will need to come in for their pit stops. So down to the bottom of the circuit with Calm Big Tam as he makes his way around the bottom of the circuit and onto that back straight. So, and then of course braking hard for that the very tight left-hander coming off that straight. So again, slowing for Calm Big Tam, just making his way round, with of course that bag Z4 closing up behind him. So following along with Dodie James as he makes his way round, with Shawsey about 2 seconds behind him. So very, very close racing at this point. Of course the field is now starting to spread out a little bit to so back with GRG Jacob being followed by Redshift 80. Of course these guys and Sausage Miyagi were battling a little while ago for 2nd, 3rd and 4th. Sausage Miyagi being able to take 2nd place and just walk off into the distance, with Redshift 80 and GRG Jacob left behind. Redshift 80 at this point trying to close the gap to GRG Jacob, just about a 1.1 second gap between the two cars at this point. So back to the back of the field again, with Dodie James in the orange BMW making his way out onto the back straight, and making his way down to the to that left-hander. He doesn't seem to be losing any time to Shawsey at this point. With Sausage Miyagi and Redshift 80 into the pits. Sausage Miyagi making his way out, so an earlier pit stop than Banslawski for Sausage Miyagi, with Banslawski still having to make his one and only pit stop for this race. So we are now on lap 18 of 27 for this race, with Banslawski in first place with a 14-second lead from GRG Jacob, with Sausage Miyagi in third. That bag Z4, a surprise runner, obviously not having pitted yet, in fourth place, with Redshift 80, Dodie James, Shawsey and CRS dizzy holding, rounding out the field. So Redshift 80 coming round the and through the S's, followed very closely by Doherty James. I don't know if Doherty James is quite close enough yet to make a move, but of course with those two battling, it will give Shorzy the chance to move up onto the back of Doherty James. And there we go, there's GRG Jacob into the pits in second place, with Banzlowski still running far out in first, the last of our race contenders to pit, with at the moment a 1 minute 44, 1 minute 45 second gap to the car behind. So now Sausage Miyagi back up into second place with a 36-second gap after his one and only pit stop. So back onto this little gaggle of cars for fighting for 5th, 6th and 7th, with Doherty James in front, with Shorzy and Redshift 80 following along behind. So just making their way down the start-finish straight, and Redshift 80 not quite close enough to have a look at the moment. Oh, a little bit of a slip there from Doherty James. A little bit of sideways action as he gets onto the power out of that very slow hairpin. So Doherty James leading this little gaggle of cars in 5th. So this battle for 5th, 6th and 7th. Round to the back of the circuit now. And Banzlowski, of course, leading at the moment through the S's with a 34-second advantage, but of course still has to make his one and only pit stop. So following along with Sausage Miyagi, who is our second place runner, and of course on fresher tyres than Banzlowski at the moment, although maybe not after that slight lock up there. Let's hope he hasn't flat spotted the tyres running into that first hairpin there. So Banzlowski out at the back of the course for his lap 20 of 27 there, so he will very soon have to make his mandatory pit stop. It's amazing that he's managed to keep those front tyres on the Renault alive for this long. And here he comes into the pits. So this crucial Sausage Miyagi has got to give us the lap of his life right now to make his way the front of the field. We'll see how much those fresh new tyres are going to be worth on Sausage Miyagi's car as he comes through that long right hand turn at the back of the course, and we move back to Banzlowski, who is already making his way out of the pits. So Sausage Miyagi not quite close enough to be able to catch Banzlowski through the pit stops, although he is now making his way onto the start finish straight as Banzlowski makes his way into the first corner. So Sausage Miyagi now making his way through the first corner, about an 8-second gap between the two cars at this point. So maybe I think the gap is slightly too far for Sausage Miyagi to make up at this point. So GRG Jacob back into third place. The field is now starting to shake itself back out again after all the pit stops. So GRG Jacob into third, Doherty James into fourth place, Redshift 80 into fifth, Shorzy in 6th, with, of course, that bagged Z4 making his way out of the pits, with CRS Dizzy making his way past him into 7th place there. So moving back up to 5th and 6th place, we are watching Redshift 80 as he makes his way onto the back straight here at Circuit of the Americas. So far this race there have been no safety cars, and there will be no safety cars now for this race. So a fast run to the end now in this feature race for the CRS Touring Car League. So watching GRG Jacob come through in 3rd place, making his way down the start finish straight, and as we move back to Doherty James and Redshift 80 as they make their way down the pit straight for the 23rd, so the 22nd lap of this 27 lap race. And as we move back to the front, Sausage Miyagi has now closed the gap to 5.8 seconds, so he is gaining on Banslowski, but I don't think he's quite gaining quickly enough to make his way onto the back of the leader. So riding along with Banslowski as he makes his way through to the penultimate corner, and then of course the short little run down to the final corner. And onto the pit straight to start lap number 23 of this 27 lap race. Of course, the laps that you guys are seeing are of course all one out, because we had lap 1 as our formation lap to form up the grids, and that of course will be the same in the sprint race, which is coming up very, very soon after the feature race. And of course, with our 12-man lobbies, the last 6, so position 7 will start in pole. So of course the grid will run 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then after, in 7th position will be our winner of the feature race. So once we finish this race, do not go anywhere. We do still have the sprint race for this evening. And moving back to Sausage Miyagi as he makes his way round the course, through those right-handers. He has closed the gap slightly. He has closed the gap up to about 5 seconds again. He is running out of laps very, very quickly, so he may not quite make it onto the back of Banslowski's car. Of course, Sausage Miyagi had to battle his way through the field, started in 2nd place, but dropped to 4th on the first lap and had to battle his way back up to 2nd place throughout the beginning part of this race. So moving to Doherty James at the back of the course, followed by Redshift 80. Of course, these two have been battling for the last few laps and running very, very close together. So Redshift 80 not quite close enough this time round, but very, very slowly creeping up onto the back of Doherty James's car. As a GRG Jacob is into a fairly safe 3rd position at this point, about 3 seconds up the road. That is of course barring any kind of mistake or mishap at this point. So moving to the back of the field, CRS Dizzy and that bag Z4 fighting for that final position. So making their way through the penultimate corner, and CRS Dizzy just looking to the inside and down the inside on that final turn. Let's see who gets the drive out of the final turn, and it seems that CRS Dizzy has got the move done, and we will see him move across to take that position and take the line for the first corner, that tight left-hander, the tight left-hand hairpin for that position. So again, back with Redshift 80, back following Doherty James, just trying to move up onto the back of that car, just trying to move up this battle, of course, for 4th and 5th position. So making his way through the long, fast right-hander. And of course running out nice and wide to just sweep in for those last 2 left-hand turns out onto the pit straight, trying to get as much drive off this final corner as possible to then try and draft up behind, try and get into the slipstream behind Doherty James, just to make his way down to the first corner. It does seem that Doherty James in his BMW does just have the legs on the straight, so it would seem that the BMWs are a little bit faster in a straight line. So making our way round to the front of the field again, with the long right-hander with Banzlowski, who is leading, has led from the start of this race. The gap has come down. It does seem that he is now managing the car and managing the gap to make his way through the final corner to then power down the pit straight. So moving back with Sausage Miyagi, who has definitely brought the gap down, has brought the gap down to about 4 seconds. Bearing in mind that after the pit stops it was 8 seconds between the two of them, so he has halved the gap in the time that we have been racing after Banzlowski's pit stop. But again, with only 1 or 2 laps left to run, I don't think it's going to be quite enough unless he can have an absolute stormer of the last 2 laps. So moving back to Redshift 80, who seems to have just fallen off the back of Doherty James a little bit and has fallen into the clutches of Shorzy slightly. As they make their way down to the start-finish line and that first tight left hairpin turn. So now following Banzlowski as he makes his way round on the penultimate lap of this 27 lap feature race, as he makes his way through the long the fast right hand turn, running it out wide, clipping the apex, and then running right out to the curb on that penultimate corner, to then do the same again, run it out wide, clip it into the apex, and then back out to the curb for the final corner, running down to then start the final lap of this feature race for the CRS Touring Car League. So looking back to the battle for 5th and 6th place, as Shorzy and that Redshift 80 are running very, very close together, making their way round to start the final lap. This could be a very exciting final lap for both drivers and for us as well. So Sausage Miyagi dropping back from Banzlowski now, running back. He's now 7 seconds behind Banzlowski, so the gap has opened up slightly, with Banzlowski making his way round the the back section of the course, coming up onto the back of the field. I don't think he's quite close enough for this to make a difference to the race at all. He's now making his way around the long right hand turn and into the penultimate turn. 2 turns to go. As he powers down to the final turn, clipping the apex nicely and powering down onto the pit straight as he makes his way to the start finish line and takes the win. So GRG Jacob running in 3rd place at this point, with Redshift 80 and Shorzy battling it out on the final lap. Of course, this is for 5th and 6th place, so there is all to play for in terms of, and Shorzy spins, just runs just a little bit too hot through that final long right hand turn. So of course Redshift 80 taking 5th position there, I believe, as we're having an issue with our 2nd place finisher Sausage Miyagi. So Banzalowski making his way round for his final lap. Let's follow that bag Z4 as he makes his way round to the final round the final corner. And then CRS Dizzy taking the final position in the field round the final corner, and making his way down to finish the race. So that is our 27 lap feature race in the books, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just hearing that Sausage Miyagi ran out of fuel on the last lap. So, of course, Sausage Miyagi not quite able to finish the last lap, which is incredibly unlucky. So I believe now, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving on to our sprint race for this evening. So of course the first six finishers in that feature race will start in the final 6 positions of the grid.